What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 2 of the Internal Leverage Podcast. So stoked to be here with you guys. Today, I am just going to deliver some really awesome value. The title of this podcast is Taking Back Control of Your Results. What a topic. I mean, we can go on and on and on and on. And that's really the purpose of this podcast, is to help you as entrepreneurs, as business owners, as people striving for success to gain greater levels of control on your success, on the results that you get. And what I want to do right now is I want to break down a little bit of a process to do just that. I want to give you guys a somewhat of a blueprint in order to gain greater levels of agency in your life and in your work, in your business, so both personally and professionally. Before I do, let's get into this problem and let's like really break it down. You know, a lot of people talk about mindset, but I'd say about 90% of the mindset that I've seen either in books or people talk about, it's all like, oh, you can do it, pat on the back, basically platitudes. Like, it's very shallow and surface level. And what I want to do in this episode, but also in this podcast in general, is take us deeper, take us layers and layers and layers deeper. The reason why I'm able to do that is simply because I've spent the last 20 years of my life really deeply studying the mind-body connection, human behavior, and psychology in a very deep way. I mean, I've gone to India, I've trained with monks, I've studied, as a filmmaker, I've worked with thousands of actors, really. And I have really delved into like the layers of human psychology and all sorts of trainings and coaching programs and studying with amazing teachers in order to really uncover what makes us tick, right? What is it that has some people just really tap into what's necessary in order to achieve what they want to achieve, whereas other people remain stuck? And this is something that has really fascinated me for a long time. And the reason being, because I'm one of those people who've been very, very, very stuck in my life, all right? This is not like high level, like I'm going to show you how it is. This is like me bearing my all, letting you guys know, like for the majority of my life, I've been an unsuccessful human being, right? Now, I'm successful at certain things, right? And successful in not being successful at other things, right? And what do I mean by that? Okay, so for many years, as a filmmaker, I worked on all sorts of really cool projects, right? Like, did a lot of cool stuff. I even worked on a film that I directed a film that went on to win an Emmy. But I never reached that level, that height of success that I always really craved and desired, where I had theatrical releases, where people knew my name, where I could, walk into an office or like a high level meeting with somebody and they knew who I was because I had a track record, right? And it really bothered me for the longest time. Like, I suffered from anxiety, I suffered from depression, and I really asked, like, what's going on here? Like, I know my purpose is to inspire and empower people, but I never, at least with my film career, was able to create that level of success that really had that level of impact on a mass scale. Like, hundreds, if not thousands of people have seen my work, but not to the extent that my deepest soul's desire, which is to impact people on the level of millions, I was able to actually reach that. And so I had to do some real deep dive soul searching a few years back. I'd say we're talking like 6-7 years ago. So basically, I was coming out of my first marriage and I was in a place where I was really questioning a lot, right? I had dedicated myself to a deep spiritual tradition, studying yoga and meditation, and even considered becoming a monk. And then I got into a marriage and things didn't work out. My life wasn't looking the way it was quote unquote supposed to look, right? And so I really started to ask myself, well, what is going on? Why am I waking up at 3 a.m. in this sort of panic, this fit of panic, right? And this like deep, deep urge and desire to have greater levels of impact. And one of the things that I had to look at and dive into was I owning responsibility? Okay. Was I owning my responsibility? Was I taking responsibility for my choices, for my actions? And not only that, but here's the layer that goes even deeper. Was I taking responsibility for the things that were happening to me? Okay, now that is slightly controversial. A lot of people, they hear that and they're like, well, what are you talking about, right? Law of attraction, what are you, I'm attracting crap into my life. What about, divorce and all the lawyers and litigation and, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that we put up with. But what if, and this is really the exploration of our program today, our episode today, what if on some unconscious level, we are creating all the things in our life, the good, the bad, all of it. How can we take responsibility for the stuff that we don't want to take responsibility for? And in doing so, how can we claim more power for ourselves, gaining greater levels of control over our results? That's what we're going to be talking about. So let's just dive into it, all right? Now, what's really interesting to me in my case, in my example, is that I've coached hundreds of entrepreneurs. At least I'm calculating over 500. I haven't tallied it, one by one, but somewhere like around there, right? And I've seen certain patterns. I've seen people that are successful. I've seen people unsuccessful. I've seen two people take the same strategy and market themselves to the same niche and get totally different results, right? Now, they're more or less saying the same thing, more or less doing the same thing, but one person is able to exponentially grow their business while the other stays stuck. Why is that? What is that? So in order to understand this better, we need a model to break down the conscious and the unconscious mind, the way this works, okay? Now, you might have heard a lot of people speak about the unconscious mind, what that is, what that means. And today I want to dive into it in a way that hopefully makes sense to you. It makes sense to you in a more specific way, a more accessible and tangible way to you than you've ever heard before. The model or the framework, the metaphor I like to use to understand the difference between what's happening on a conscious level versus unconscious is the metaphor of the iceberg, okay? So let's think about it like this. We're taking back control of our results, right? So the tip of the iceberg is the results, right? It's the part that people see. So for instance, you're an entrepreneur, and let's say you're doing sales, right? So whether or not you're selling your service, your product, you got clients, your business is growing, that is what people see, right? If you make a lot of money, it's very difficult to hide that, right? People are going to start to see, Abe's moving into a nicer house. He's driving a nicer car. Like things are working out for him, right? Versus they're coming for the house. They're coming for the car. I'm filing bankruptcy. Like this is all the stuff that people can see. That's the tip of the iceberg. So how do we start to understand what creates those results? What goes into creating that tip? Well, then we got to start to dive beneath the surface. So let's do it. Let's go the first layer down. Now, this is going to come as no surprise, but obviously the first layer down, what creates the results is the actions you're taking, right? Write this down. Get a pen and write this down. But the strategy you implement, your daily habits, your routines, what are you doing on a day-to-day basis that is going to create the result in your life? Now, I'm talking about entrepreneurialism. I'm talking about, let's say, business and sales, but you can apply this to health, right? Are you doing your push-ups? Are you going for your run? Are you eating healthy? Same thing for relationships. Are you going on date night? Are you kissing each other? Are you saying, I love you, right? Are you cultivating that? Because if not, don't be surprised if one day you wake up with a Dear John note, right? Or one day you wake up, you get on the scale and you realize where all this weight come from. So the very first layer underneath the surface that nobody sees is the work that goes into it. And that should come as no surprise. Now, what I wanted to do today and take you guys on is a journey on what goes on beneath the layer of action. Because that's when we start getting into the subconscious mind, okay? Now, there is a sort of a ratio or a percentage that I've heard, and I've studied hypnotherapy, I've studied psychology, and so it's different for everybody, but everybody pretty much agrees and acknowledges that yes, there is a conscious mind, which is our willpower, our reasoning. It's what we're aware of, right? And then there is the unconscious mind. There's everything that's happening beneath it. Now, the ratio, the percentage is that about 12% of our mind is conscious, right? About 12% is the willpower. It's my logical reasoning mind. And 88% is unconscious, right? So 88% of what's happening beneath the surface of the actions we're taking is all coming from an unconscious place. One of my favorite quotes ever is by Dr. Carl Jung, the famous psychologist who said, "Until we make the unconscious conscious, it's going to continue to direct our life and we will call it fate." Meaning that things are going to happen in our life. We'll constantly repeat certain patterns and certain loops. If we're stuck, we're going to remain stuck. And it's all going to be happening from an unconscious place. And so our job, our whole goal in personal development, growing as a human being, is to develop more awareness, right? Because when I start to become aware of all the unconscious patterns and habits and conditionings and wiring of the brain and everything like that, well, then I have the ability to choose, right? If I'm doing something from an unconscious place, when I become aware and cognizant of it, I then can choose to not do that thing. Or alternatively, start to do the other things that are going to absolutely serve me. So what that is called is agency. Right? And the original meaning of the word agency means the ability to choose, the freedom to choose, right? So what we're talking about here, how do we get results back, is by developing first awareness and then creating in that awareness, we create more agency, more choicefulness. So let's go ahead, let's come back to our iceberg metaphor and dive even deeper and check out what are the layers beneath that contribute to whether or not we get the results when we put in the action and the work, okay? So the first layer down from action is the layer of perception, all right? That is how we view things, the way we see things, okay? Our perspective. Now, this is very subjective. Your perspective, what you see, is different than what I see, right? Of course, it is all presupposed by where it is that you're standing. And we're going to get to that in a moment, right? But let's just, for instance, let's take an analogy. Let's say we're walking down a very dark path, right? And there's no light out. It's like, it's a new moon. So it means it's really dark out. We can't see anything. And we're walking down, and then you and I both step on something, right? Now, from your point of view, you see a snake. Now, you're afraid of snakes. So even though you want to get to where we're going, you're so afraid that you run in the opposite direction, okay? Me, on the other hand, if I see it differently, I see, actually, wait a second, that's not a snake. That's a twig, right? And I realize there's actually no threat. There's no danger. I can keep going. I can keep on moving towards my goal. So again, this perception, the way we see the world, the way we see ourselves and our role and our place in that world, it's so important, right? And it really is the sort of make or break for so many entrepreneurs, so many business leaders, because when challenges come, when catastrophes strike, the way we see those challenges, whether we see them as something that's absolutely going to just like stop us in our tracks and means doom, versus seeing challenges as an opportunity, these are two totally different mindsets, two totally different perspectives, right? And so a big part of the mindset work that I do with a lot of clients is helping them to shift their perspective. But it gets deeper. There's a layer underneath perspective where if we do not access this layer and we do not work and do the work deep on this deep layer, then we can never actually shift the perspective. All right. So let's go ahead and let's put our oxygen masks on. Let's go even deeper. All right. Because it is this final layer, which is the bedrock of our psychology. It's really at the base of our subconscious brain, our subconscious programming. And again, if we do not get ourselves and develop our awareness and bring our awareness to this deeper, innermost part, then absolute growth and transformation is impossible. So the final layer that underlies perspective, action, and results is the layer of story, of myth, and of metaphor. All right. So I want you to just slow down, take that in for a second. Story, myth, and metaphor. The reason why I'm so attracted to this work is because of my background in filmmaking, my background in storytelling. I spent years working with actors and screenwriters and filmmakers to create stories that were real, that were authentic, digging through layers of story to get to the subtext, right? To get to the underlying narrative. And so when I started to get into this work, the mindset work, I mean, it was like huge light bulb moments going off for me, because the thing is, story affects us at such a deep level, right? And so what do I mean by that? What does that mean? Story, myth, metaphor. Well, there's a few ways to think about this, right? One way is to think about it like this. A picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So think of a friend or a boss. Think of somebody that you've worked with, okay? And think of all the words that you can use to describe that person, right? You can say, this person is mean, is arrogant, rules with an iron fist, doesn't tolerate crap, da-da-da-da, right? Or you can use an image and you can say that person is a dictator. Bam! Automatically, I get what you're talking about. That is the power of myth, right? A myth, and this goes back to Carl Jung, a myth is an archetype. Okay, an archetype is basically an original form, an original pattern that is shared by the sort of universal consciousness. Okay, now this might sound woo-woo, but this is actually backed up by a lot of psychological, let's just say, psychologists throughout the years, especially those that really agree with Carl Jung, talk about this thing, the universal consciousness, which basically means it's kind of like a database in all of humanity's mind, in the sense that when a new idea is introduced, it gets stored in the database, right? I don't want to go too philosophical, because that's a wormhole that there's, that just will get us sucked in for another few episodes. But the idea being that if I want to communicate an idea to you very quickly and succinctly, all I need to use is certain archetypes and certain patterns. And we use this in marketing, we use this in sales, but we can use it to understand our own psychology and mindset, okay? So the reason why this is important is that we have to recognize that if we're not getting the results that we want in our life, if we're not getting the results that we want in our business, it's because there's some story that is off, okay? There's something that is off deep in the depth of our psychology and our unconscious mind that we need to bring our attention to. And the biggest story is the difference between feeling empowered, being an empowered person who can take action, versus being a victim, right? And the story of an empowered person is, I own my results. I'm responsible not only for the things that are a consequence of my decisions, but also everything that's happening to me, I'm responsible for, versus the victim mindset or the victim story, which is that life is happening to me, right? So the difference, life is happening for me, meaning that if some catastrophe hits, let's say COVID hits my business, and my business, shuts down and I lose clients and customers. Now I can see it, again, this is perspective. I can see it as, I'm a victim of circumstance. COVID is, here to abuse me and here to, strip me of my power. Or I can see it as an opportunity to pivot, to shift, to grow. Now, if I choose the latter, then I'm going to have what's called an empowered mindset, right? I'm going to see everything that comes my way, no matter how difficult, no matter how challenging, as an opportunity for growth, which is why so many successful people say that self-awareness is the absolute key to success, right? Creating this ability to be aware of ourselves, our thinking, practicing what's called metacognition when we're thinking about the way we're thinking, in order to then be able to make better, more effective decisions that are going to bring us in closer contact with the results that we're aiming to achieve. Now, how do we do that, right? Like, this sounds great, Abe, but what are some practical tools to access that, right? Or before we get to the tools, I'm going to give you guys 3 very powerful tools in a second. All right. So first, I gave you the process: develop awareness Awareness begets agency. With agency, we can shift stories, right? And what are some very practical tools? We're going to get to that in a second. But before we do, I just want to give you guys one more example of how this all works and how this is all self-perpetuating, right? So Tony Robbins talks about what he calls the 4 boxes, right? The first box being basically unlimited potential. Everybody has the same potential, all right? Anybody can achieve whatever it is that they absolutely want to achieve. However, what they are limited by is their belief. Now, that belief is the story. It's the layer of story, okay? The actions that they take is limited by the limitation of their belief. So let's say that I'm a door-to-door salesperson, okay? But I don't believe that people are actually going to buy from me. So when I go to take action, the action that I take is very limited. Right? I'm going to show up at your door and I'm going to be like, hey, I got this thing. Do you want to buy this thing? You don't want to buy this thing, right? Okay. You know? I'm not very effective, right? I'm not very inspirational and influential or magnetic, okay? So naturally, I'm not going to get a good result. So it goes unlimited potential, limited belief, limited action, and disappointing results. Now, here's the crazy thing. It's a self-perpetuating cycle, right? Because once my vision, the perspective, I see those limiting results or the unsatisfactory results, and it reinforces the story. You see, I told you I couldn't sell this stuff, right? I knew I couldn't do it. I don't know why I try anyway in the first place. I don't even know why I put myself out there. I'll just say real quick. I had this sort of self-perpetuating cycle in my relationships, right? My dating life for years. Actually, I was on Clubhouse last night talking about this. For years, I had this story that if I had a crush on somebody, there was no way in hell that she was going to like me back, right? Because I had been disappointed so many times. I go to ask somebody out. They say, hey, I don't think about you like that. Sorry. And it was just like, you see, again, right? And then I started missing the cues. I started not even picking up on the possibilities. Like whenever I had a crush on somebody, I just kind of dismiss it. And then only later on in life, I'd find out that they had a crush on me too, right? Anyway, so let's come back to the example of sales. Using those boxes, if somebody is super empowered, coming at it from that empowered mindset, and they realize, look, I haven't sold, this thing before. I haven't made this level of money before, but you know what? I'm down to find out. Can I do this? I think I can. I just freaking know I can. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I'm just going to take the first step and let the next step appear, right? I'm going to act on faith. I'm just going to go, right? And their belief is so high that they take massive action. Because they're taking massive action, they're showing up, playing full out, right? Really being in the flow, being in the moment and surrendering to the process. That people like that tend to get incredible results, right? They tend to have a more magnetic personality. They're able to influence others. They're able to achieve what it is that they want to achieve. And because of that, because they consistently get really great results, it reinforces their confidence, right? And then the next time that cycle repeats, it's like, hey, I've done it already. I've done it in the past. Let's do it again, right? So it's a self-perpetuating spiral, and we could take that elevator, that spiral up and inspire ourselves, or we take it down, right? So you're either, one of my mentors used to say, if you're, what did you say? She said, I can't even remember the quote, but something like, you're either speeding up or you're slowing down. There is no, let me take it easy. It's you're either really going for it, going down the hill full speed, or you're just slowing down, right? And you're self-sabotaging. So anyway, that's a lot, right? And hopefully you're getting this and this is making sense. And I, definitely want you guys to write in the comments, beneath the show, because I read that stuff, right? And I want to hear from you guys, and so I can, better explain these concepts and deliver these tools for you so that it's beneficial. But let's get into, before we wrap up today, I want to get into what are the 3 tools or the 3 sort of keys, if you will, to accessing greater levels of empowerment within ourselves, feeling like life is happening for us, not to us, and basically, eventually getting the results that we absolutely want, right? Taking back control of the results, all right? So here is tool number one. Tool number one, you've probably heard it before, but let's go back into it. Tool number one is the power of visualization. Why is visualization so powerful? So in Chicago, back in 1996, Dr. Blaslotto, it's quite a name, at the University of Chicago did a study, right? And what they did is they took basketball players, 3 groups of basketball players, and for a month they basically had them go through a routine, right? So the first group didn't do anything, didn't touch a basketball, didn't get on the court, nada, right? The second group, shooting free throws every single day for like an hour, right? The third group didn't touch the basketball, but would show up at the court and would close their eyes and visualize themselves successfully making free throws for an hour every single day. Okay? What happened? What's the result? So, as you can imagine, the first group, there was no improvement, right? No sign of improvement. The second group, 24% improvement. Now, here's the most fascinating thing. The third group that didn't touch the basketball physically, but mentally visualized themselves being successful in creating that free throw, improved 23%. That's huge, right? Meaning that their muscles, right, the muscle memory, like their physical body wasn't playing ball, wasn't touching the ball, but mentally, imagery, they were imagining themselves playing and they were able to improve their game. The reason for this is because our unconscious mind can't distinguish between what is real and what is imaginary. So what's going on is that we're creating those neural networks, those neural pathways through the power of visualization. Speaking of the number 23, look at Jordan, right? He'll tell you, all the successful athletes will tell you that they utilize visualization before a game in order to imagine their success. So visualization is very, very important, and it's one of the biggest keys to success, all right? Now, tool number 2, again, not going to be anything you haven't heard before, but it's a reminder. Journaling, super powerful and impactful. Why? Journaling it gives us access to the subconscious mind. Again, everything that we're doing is diving beneath the surface and uncovering, discovering what are some of these unconscious patterns and behaviors that are getting in our way. And when we develop the awareness, we're able to have more agency and choicefulness. So by journaling, by allowing yourselves to free write and associate, not for just like 10 seconds, a minute, but really go for a good 10 minutes. And sometimes I journal, sometimes I don't. But when I do get a chance to journal and just allow myself to freehand write, like some of the stuff that comes up is absolutely amazing. And I do want to say it's much better to do this by hand. I have an iPad with, one of these styluses, so I'm able to do it digitally. But if you don't have that, then get a piece of paper, do it by hand the old-fashioned way. The reason being, our hand is, when we're writing, it's an idiomotive response, meaning that a lot of the way we write is connected to the subconscious brain, the subconscious mind, which is why for detectives and police forces, whatever, they utilize. What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 2
reading hands.
of
There's people who
the
specialize in
podcast.
reading handwriting
To be here.
in order to tell a little bit about the psychological makeup of a person, of a human being, because a lot of our subconscious, sort of wiring it gets expressed through that idiomotor response of writing. But the cool thing about it is that there's also a sort of, it's like a back door to the subconscious. So if I'm writing out something, like, so for instance, if I want to plant something in my subconscious, instead of saying affirmations, which is great, if we write it out, it gives us like a sort of added benefit to it. So it's a two-way street to the subconscious. We're able to write and see what comes out, which is why writers, are addicted to writing, because it's like all this subconscious stuff that's just pouring out onto paper, right? But also, as people who are trying to, anybody who is on the path of personal growth and self-discovery, all of this, we can utilize journaling and writing as a way to develop more awareness, and then also to plant seeds, right? Not just to visualize in our mind's eye, to slow down, meditate like in the first tool, but also to write it out and to implant it. It has a huge, very powerful effect, okay? So that's the second tool. The third tool, find a mentor, all right? Find a coach, find an accountability group, find a mastermind. The reason being because environment is so important. There was a behavioral psychologist named Kurt Lewin who came up with this formula that behavior is a function of the person, which is the personality, the motivation, their history, and their environment. So you can do all this work on yourself, right? But if you're in an environment that doesn't support you, doesn't support your growth, doesn't support your goals, your dreams, all that, then it's going to be not impossible, but very difficult to achieve what it is that you want to achieve, which is why people who invest in themselves, find coaches and mentors, become part of masterminds, move a lot quicker. They cut out years from their journey because they're just surrounded. They're in that environment, and they're constantly being just soaked, with this sort of, whether if it's a positive influence or this empowerment, this sort of sense that I can achieve great things, the story that life is happening for me, not to me, this empowered mindset. I've done it myself. I've invested in myself. I've, as much as possible, try to place myself in groups of people that are better than me, because if I'm the smartest one in the room, then I'm in the wrong room, right? And then there's, of course, that famous quote that you're the sum of the 5 people that you surround yourself with the most. So you want to make sure that your environment is clean and productive and conducive to the goals that you are setting for yourself. 3 basic tools. Again, nothing that you haven't heard before, but a reminder that these tools are so powerful for us to reprogram the subconscious mind and to replace those disempowered victim stories with a more empowered story, so that we can take control of our results and achieve what it is that we're looking to achieve in our lives, both personally and professionally. I'm Abraham, signing off, and I'll see you on the next episode.